Welcome to the Wildcat Extra Roundtable. We'll be previewing Northwestern's Saturday game against the Michigan Wolverines at Ryan Field. I'm here with Rohan, Nadkarni, Alex Putterman. Alex, let's start with you. Coming off the Nebraska loss 2 weeks ago, really sort of a demoralizing loss for Northwestern, and they came out of that game ravaged by injuries. How's the team looking coming out of the bye week?
Well, one thing the bye week was huge for was, like you said, they were injured before, and the bye week helped them get healthy. Last week, Pat Fitzgerald talked about all the players. He named 12 or 13 players who wouldn't have been able to play if they had played a game during the bye week. With the week off, the team got healthy. With the exception of Venrick Mark and Stephen Buckley, who are out for the season, everybody came back and practiced. Dean Lowry is going to be back. Tyler Scott was a little banged up. He'll play. Tony Jones came out of the game against Nebraska. He'll play. All the other running backs are ready to go. So the bye week was huge for, besides putting some distance between now and a pretty devastating loss, was getting everybody who had been banged up healthy and ready to go.
Rohan, Northwestern 0-5 in the Big Ten. Michigan started the season 6-0. They've fallen off a little bit. Why is Northwestern favored in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty miraculous to think that somehow Northwestern is a 3-point favorite here at home against Michigan. And the truth is that's more of a referendum on how bad Michigan has looked in the past few weeks and, Northwestern, potentially being good. The truth is Michigan was never as good as its 6-0 record. They struggled in non-conference, kind of squeaked out a couple wins early in the season, and they never really, bounced back from those wins. And in the sense that didn't springboard them into a good conference season or whatever. They played Michigan State and just looked especially weak on the offensive side of the ball. So, whereas Northwestern has been, losing 5 straight games, obviously, that's never a good thing. But for the most part, they've been competitive. We all know Ohio State, they had a lead in the fourth quarter, and Wisconsin aside, that they had a chance to win every single one of the games they've been in this season. One thing about Michigan, though, last year when Northwestern faced Devin Gardner, he was still pretty green as a starting quarterback now. Devin Gardner has a lot of experience. Up and down play this season, but Northwestern in the last couple years has struggled against Michigan's quarterbacks, Denard and Devin Gardner. So I expect him to have a good game. But, Northwestern, is at home, and there's a good case for them to be favored in this game. Like we said, they've been very competitive in the Big Ten, and Michigan has looked, out of sorts, but I expect to have a good game from Gardner and for it to be pretty close.
And you supposedly get 3 extra points for being home, which basically means
it's an even game.
Right. If it were on a neutral site, it would be a toss-up.
Sure. Alex, Northwestern finally against Nebraska looked like they were putting together a complete performance. The defense run over a little bit at first, but responded well, made some turnovers, some key plays late, and then obviously the heartbreaking Hail Mary to end the game. What are going to be the keys for the Wildcats to finally get over that hump, to get that first Big Ten win on Saturday?
Well, the key is on the other side of the ball, because early in the Nebraska game, when it looked like Northwestern might finally win, was when the offense was going well. Simeon came in through a great, perfect pass to Dan Vitale. Trayvon Green scored a few plays later, and it really felt like everything is going right. Somebody pinch me. And then it collapsed. After the second quarter, the offense just basically disappeared. There was very little offense. They only were in a position to win because Tyler Scott intercepted a pass and took it all the way back to the 8-yard line. They couldn't even get it into the end zone from there and had to settle for a field goal, which is one of the main reasons they did end up losing. So the key to the game is really putting together offense, not just for 2 or 3 drives like they did against Nebraska, but for the whole game. You can't go 2.5 quarters of almost no offensive production and expect to beat a Big Ten team.
That Nebraska game was such a microcosm of this season. When you look at Northwestern's first, 4 games in September, they averaged just over 41 points a game. Like the first half of the Nebraska game, they were able to move the ball up and down the field. And then since October 5th, they've averaged just under 22 points a game. Like the second half against Nebraska where, they just can't seem to score even when they're gifted opportunities in the red zone. It's hurt them in so many games this season. They just can't seem to find what it takes to score once they're close to the end zone.
And one of the things you have to look at is the play calling. The play calling has been really uninventive. When Coulter is in, they run the same types of plays. Simeon, they throw a lot with Simeon. He's been awful, which is another thing. But there has to be some sort of creativity because whatever they've been doing the last 4 or 5 weeks, and in the second half against Nebraska specifically, was just not productive. Something has to change in the play calling.
Sure. Rohan, it seems like every week our expectations for this season have kind of gotten lower and lower as this losing streak has gone along. And now we're at the point, with Michigan State still on the schedule, given how well their defense is playing, that this is probably a must-win game if the Wildcats even want to make a bowl game this season. What do you think are going to be some of the long-term implications coming off such a positive year last year for really sort of regressing to the old Northwestern, you might say?
Yeah, I'm guilty as anyone of beating this to death, I guess you could say, but the truth is, when you look at Northwestern from a big picture perspective, every season is about, is this team, closer to gaining the respect that, they believe they've earned. And last season it seemed like a legitimate step towards, what the program is trying to be. They want to be, tops in academics and tops in football, and they were well on their way. And then you look at like a season like this, it's funny because Pat Fitzgerald told the Tribune before the season, he said, if we win, that's great, but and once we lose, we're going to say, well, there's still Northwestern. Unfortunately, they've lost a lot this season, and it's given fuel to those critics who say, that's still Northwestern. Look at what they did. They had that one good season. It was a cute story. Now they're back to being the Big Ten's doormat. And what's really, truly unfortunate was this was the year that they had the spotlight. They had College Game Day. They had the primetime game with Ohio State. Even after that loss, I had people telling me, Northwestern's going to run the table and earn that rematch with Ohio State in the Big Ten. Look at what they proved that night. But now look at what they've proved in these last, 5 losses. What's funny is I always thought that this season would reveal a lot about Northwestern because you were going to learn about how they dealt with success. And unfortunately, it just hasn't gone their way, and they've lost the nation's eye, and now they're in a position where next year, if they're trying to build that respect back, they're going to have to start from the bottom again.
All right, it is once again time for everyone's favorite part of the show, predictions. Alex, let's start with you. What do you see happening on Saturday?
Each of the last 2 weeks, I've picked Northwestern to lose, and that's been very successful for me. But this week I'm going the other way. I'm picking Northwestern 28, Michigan 24. I feel like beyond the argument of they have to win sometime, I think Michigan's vulnerable, Northwestern's at home. They showed me something against Nebraska. They played with a Michigan caliber team. We know that they can compete, and really they were one miracle play away from beating a solid middle of the pack Big Ten team. They've got Michigan here at Ryan Field. Northwestern 28, Michigan 24.
Rohan, what about you? When does the misery end this week?
Listen, if Northwestern isn't embarrassed by this season at this point, I don't know what else is going to get them to play a great game. Not only have they had to deal with a 5-game losing streak, a disrespect, everyone telling them that, they're a fraud, they're not the team they thought they were. And on top of that, this, uniform controversy that somehow made Northwestern the talk of the country in a week they didn't even have a game. So, if every coach, every player isn't the angriest they've been, the most embarrassed they've been, and the most motivated they've been, I don't know what else is going to do it. They have this home game against Michigan. I'm expecting a good crowd at Ryan Field, and I'm with Putterman. I think they have to take this one. This game's going to show a lot to me, at least, about the character of this team and if they're going to fold this season or, make a play for a bowl game. So I also have Northwestern. I'm going to pick Northwestern big. I'm going to go Northwestern 31, Michigan 14.
All right. They're on the record. We'll see what happens on Saturday. Be sure to tune into our coverage. DailyNorthwestern.com, Wildcat Extra on Twitter. And we will be back next week to preview the Wildcats matchup with the Michigan State Spartans. Thanks for watching.